plasma, ether, bioplasma. Let's talk about how it applies to our health. So we know plasma as the fourth element, right? We have liquids, we have gas, we have solids, and we have plasma, a charged gas of electrons, protons, and ions. We see plasma researchers really looking at some of the plasma formations throughout our galaxy and our universe. We have plasma pouring from the sun that reaches our own system here in the form of solar radiation. Now, when you look at the Earth, you see that if you travel up, miles up, there's the ionosphere. Between the Earth and the ionosphere is a bouncing back and forth of the Schumann resonance. Above that ionosphere is the magnetosphere. And you see that these plasma scientists are looking at Kordylewski clouds or the Van Allen belts, these belts or clouds of plasma. And what is plasma? Again, it's charged, electrically charged, electrons, protons, ions, and it's not just positively charged or negatively charged, it has both working within it, swirls of positively charged plasma in the same area as negatively charged plasma, divided by a thin sheath, right? This dielectric capacity of energy to be in the same area of a different charge is all around us. And it's inside of us. Albert St. Georgi and his research and books that he talks about bioenergetics, he talks about how in these molecules, in an atom, this idea of an empty space is incorrect. It is filled with this electricity, with this energy, with this plasma. And that's what we find with the research of galactic plasma as well. We used to think that space was mostly empty, right? We now know that it's not empty. It's filled with this rich, energized plasma. And that same thing can be applied, that same idea can be applied to our biology. And when we look at what that would look like, we see that certain structures in the body create this charged, excited plasma of energy. We see that structures like melanin, for example, melanin we're so used to hearing about on our skin, in our hair, the color of our eyes, but we have melanin throughout our body. We have melanin in our internal organs, deep within us, in our brain, neuromelanin. And when ultraviolet light strikes melanin, it splits the water that is surrounding melanin. Now we know that when water comes up against a hydrophilic surface in our body, like our cell membranes, like our mitochondria, like our fascia, like our DNA, like our microtubules, it creates a different structure. There's still debate about what that structure is, but there's not debate that that water creates a different organization. Some call it exclusion zone water because of the work of Gerald Pollack. He was the first to really identify that there was a different structure, although researchers have been talking about it for over a century. It's sometimes called cell-bound water, interfacial water, biological water. When that water comes up to a hydrophilic surface like our cell, it changes an organization. It creates a negatively charged organization of water. Right outside of that water, it creates a proton-rich zone or a proton wire, and that separation of charge can create potential energy, just like a separation of charge in a battery. And this is exactly what we see in those plasma clouds that span miles and miles and miles above us, in between us and the sun, right? Like the Kordylewski clouds, these clouds of plasma, and they're positively charged and negatively charged zones. Plasma water within us is doing the same thing. You look at melanin, it is covered with this cell-bound, this different organization of water. When it is exposed to ultraviolet light, it splits that water into molecular hydrogen, molecular oxygen, and this plasma of energy that can be utilized for action in the body. We see this association with conditions like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, where there's a decrease in melanin, and interventions like light interventions have been shown to decrease the symptoms. And researchers are associating that with the capacity of melanin, neuromelanin, in the neurons in our brain to take that light information, that frequency information from light, split that organized water that is surrounding melanin, split it into hydrogen, molecular oxygen, this plasma of electrons to be utilized for energy. And we see that benzene ring and those pi electrons that are also excited by light, creating this flow of energy, right? Those electrons can freely dissociate and go between the molecules around them. And it's absolutely paradigm shifting to think that there is this flow of energy throughout our body, our fascia creating the same thing, our microtubules creating the same thing. And I say this so often in so many of my videos that modern medicine has done an incredible job deep diving into this chemical mechanical model. And now we're at a spot where our technology is in a place where the science is emerging, understanding this language of frequency in the body and how we can utilize it for health. Those pillars of quantum biology, light, sound, water, frequency, and how they impact our health. If you like this content, give me a like, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video because I love sharing this information and I really appreciate your presence here. Thank you so much for joining me.